All right, welcome everybody to our AT Chatter today. This is a chance to talk on the topic of AT accommodations for state testing. Traci and I have done webinars on this in the past, the last few years, and we thought we'd change it up a little this year. Still have all the rich resources for you, but we really want to hear from you and make it a more conversational format. I also want to highlight, and I discovered this yesterday, if Tony and Kara could go into your toolbar and raise your hand, we'll see what happens. You should raise to the top. See how she went to the top? Isn't that cool? So we have our special guests from OSPI. We have Kara Todd and Tony Wheeler, who are experts in this area. And so if Traci and I can answer your questions, they certainly are here to answer some of the harder questions or what's to come, or if you have things that you requested. And you're going to see an example of something we asked them for, and it's hot off the press, this wonderful resource that Kara Todd just created. So anyway, let me just go through a few of our housekeeping norms. So if you haven't been to an AT Chatter before, again, it's a more informal environment. We want you to be able to speak. However, when you're not speaking, of course, try to keep muted so we don't have background noise, but please feel free to speak up. This is your webinar and we want to dialogue with you. So I'm going to try to take some notes in the background, although I think we're going to be able to capture the conversation very well with the recording. So that might just take care of the note-taking needs, but I'll still document anything significant that's not in our PowerPoint already. And then, yeah, so that I'll show you a quick look at our notes page. So this is, oh, that's the wrong one. Ha. All right, well, I have the right one right here. Here we are. So we have some questions today that we're just going to talk about. These are the launch pad, but if there's other questions, we don't have to stick with these. We can go to wherever you guys want to go today. We just wanted these to be, to get us started. And in fact, Kristen Leslie texted me today and said, I want to have a question about what's important for parents to know about AT accommodations on state testing. So I just added that because we always have to partner with parents. And if we want the students to be proficient at these tools before it's on an accommodation, then parents need to help us, reinforce that home and school. So that's that one. And yeah, so I think those are just our background norms for how we're working today. And we're hoping again that we get to discuss AT accommodations for state testing, and answer your questions about that. Make sure you have access to the resources you need, and especially important to hear from you on what's happening in your districts around state testing and what questions and help do you need with that. And you'll see here that we just right here in our AT Chatter PowerPoint, we just linked some of the more important resources. AT accommodations for state testing, that's the PowerPoint that Traci and I have been presenting the last 2 years. Updated for this year.
Updated,
yes, of course. And then the middle two PowerPoints are resources right directly to SBA supports and user guides. And then this, I'm going to let Kara talk a little bit about this, how to use the speech to text tool, the new resource on that. Kara, you want to talk about this for a quick second?
Sure, it's my favorite new document ever. And I have actually, it got sent out to special education staff. It was in their latest newsletter. And it goes through step by step exactly how to try out speech to text without having to change the student's settings in TIDE yet. So yeah, so go to like the first page. So this first page is kind of the, like your third grade English teacher told you to answer all the W questions, like who, what, when, where, why, and how. So it goes through what the speech to text accommodation is and which tests it's on, because it's also available in science, who should try it out and when they should try it out, like now, soon, don't wait until March to try this out. And then in the next few pages, if you go down to the next page, it goes through step by step how educators who have a TIDE account in Cambium Systems can log into the TA practice interface. So it's got screenshots, exactly like step by step, how you set up the practice session. Go a couple pages. Let's see, there's like 3 pages of all of this stuff. Yep. And yeah, go to the next page. Yep. And then how to start a practice test in the student version of the secure browser, but how to do it as a guest. You don't actually have to use a student name and SSID. So any adult can just do this. And then if you go a couple more pages, then you go back to the TA interface, and step number 4 is like where the magic happens. This step number 4 is only available for practice and training tests. It's not available for the summative tests or the interim tests, but this is where the TA can choose different settings for the student. And so I've circled the speech to text, and you can turn it on. And then, yeah, right there, and then go another page. And then this is what it looks like in the student test, and how, and in the document, we suggest that the grown-ups try it first and get comfortable with it, and then bring the kid in at this step and have the kid try it out to see if they actually like the process. Because the speech to text tool does not control the interface. Cambium actually calls it dictation. And so it really is a dictation tool. It kind of shows where the microphones are going to be. And then my favorite page, and it's Tony's favorite page too, is the last page, where you actually ask the student if they like the tool or if they don't like the tool. And if this, because it's all goes back to the student. And if the student likes it, there's a couple steps to do. And if the student doesn't like it, there's a link to the GTSA for some other things you might consider. So the magic in that step 4, where you can, in the TA interface, where you can change and pick any settings, is that after the kid likes the speech to text tool, then you can go turn on anything else that the kid's going to have on their test and see if they like the interaction, because sometimes there's some interactions. You can even turn on text to speech for their student responses and anything else that you want to really double, triple check that the kid likes it before the school coordinator or the district coordinator or you commit to those settings for the student in TIDE. And we've also been getting lots of questions about print on demand. And so my boss just today said, hey, can we flesh this out and make it about more? And I said, no, but I'll make you another document. So I'm going to make a different version of this for print on demand, which actually is a little less complicated because you can use the guest browser for that. So that will be coming out in the next couple of weeks. I figured people would be happier to read a short document for the one thing they need than try to weed through a 100-page document for every single tool. So
we absolutely appreciate that you have made this document, and we're going to say specifically for us, because it's wonderful. And I think that one of the things that I would like to just keep bringing up all the time is, how are we going to take all these wonderful tools that we have and that have been built for us, like this document? How do we get that out in the hands of the right people? So it went out to special education.
Yep.
Right. But now we have to get it from our directors. So that means that now that I have it, I can go ahead and send it out to people, and I can advocate with my director to say, let's get this out. How are we going to communicate this out and now start getting people to start using?
Yeah. And it did go out to district assessment coordinators in their weekly newsletter as well. Mm-hmm. But you're right. It's sometimes it's hard for us to actually get it in the hands of the right people.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool. Well, I'd like to suggest maybe while we're doing a couple of the key resources, stop and take questions. Like, this is a newer tool, the newest tool, accommodation. Does anyone have any questions? Has anyone tried this out yet? Where are you guys at in your districts with this? Or are you excited to learn about it today? Do I need to allow you guys to talk? Is that the problem? Oh, excited to learn about it today. Good. Please join us. Let's see.
I think you might have to
Well, I
unmute
have to
people.
unmute them. Okay.
So far, I don't think you had to unmute me.
I didn't
Yeah.
have to. Okay. Well,
I can unmute myself.
Okay. Okay, good.
But districts, I'm the accessible educational materials coordinator here in the state of Arkansas. And a lot of our schools are using some of these features in other programs like ACT Aspire and things like that. I don't know if we have a dictation yet. I haven't looked into that, but I'm excited to learn more about this.
Awesome. Thank you. Welcome from Arkansas. That's fun. Any other thoughts or comments about this, or any implementation of this yet in any of the districts or states?
I'm kind of curious, how do you guys see being able to get this out to people into the right hands? So I go to IEP after IEP after IEP. This would be something that I could take to those IEP meetings and share. So as Kristen said, how are families getting a hold of some of this stuff? We may not have families who are logging on and doing that kind of stuff, but it would be, I think, important to let the families know, yep, we have this opportunity. And so if this is an IEP accommodation, let's make certain that that it's into the IEP and it's written into the accommodations and described well in the present levels.
Awesome. Well, please feel free to even circle back to this and continue to ask questions if you want to. Traci, I would suggest maybe, why don't you just give them a quick overview of the PowerPoint resources, and that what I'd like you guys to do is jot down the questions you have about things. And we have some of the questions embedded here, but just give them a quick visual over that. And then I think we dive into the questions. Does that sound good? I can share it or you can share it. What do you want to do? Oh, there, she's got it. And then I'll take notes while you're doing that.
We are not seeing your presentation.
You have an OSPI tech assist paper. Is that what you're trying to look at? Uh-oh.
Tracy's muted still. There she is.
There it is. She's on it.
Unmute, unmute. Gosh.
Hey.
So this is the presentation that we have done for a couple of years. What I've done is I've left quite a bit of this in here, and I may have hidden some things, but I updated the resources. Couple of things to note. When you want to go to this timelines and calendars for OSPI, it's the new one now, the new link, and it's grades 3 through 8 and 10 for ELA and math. This year I did see it says 11 and 12 available, and I'm going to scoot you over here, that there are some 11 and 12 available as well because of some of the challenges we had last year with being able to take assessment. So definitely go to this site and check that out. I did not put in the testing window dates as I had in the past because there were many and varied. So let me go ahead and see if this will pop up on the right screen.
And Traci, I'll just interject that available for 11th and 12th would really be for the purpose of satisfying the graduation pathway requirement. So if it's an 11th or 12th grader who has a different pathway, a CTE course or anything like that, then we wouldn't want them to be sitting for SBA in grade 12.
Absolutely. I was trying to see where I found that information, but it is in here.
Yeah, and then you scroll down, we need to take off our 21 testing, but if you do the spring 22 test windows, there it is.
There you go.
Calendar.
And then there's that's where it's at 11 and 12. And
Yep.
again, yes, this is why I didn't put it into that whole PowerPoint because there's a lot of words in there. So there are your windows that are open. And then if you go down, there's also your other windows that are open here for your Washington Access to Instrument and Measurement. That's the WAAIM. And then I'm going to say there's a new name for the ELPA, right? And
it's a new test.
It's a new test.
So we no longer belong to ALPA 21. We now
Okay.
belong to the WIDA consortia. So
Oh.
we are using the WIDA assessments, which WIDA does have a pretty extensive training website if given permission. You have to be a user with multiple training modules and stuff. And if that's information anyone's curious about, we can connect you with Leslie Huff, who oversees those assessments.
Perfect. So the thing that I will say, what I noticed when I was filling out some IEP stuff, and I said, oh, the kid's not going to take the WIDA because that's the wrong test for a student who would be taking SBA. And WIDA is now the WIDA annual. And I know people have also called it the WIDA access, at least in our little slice of the world. And then the WIDA alternate access, alternate annual is what one might be doing if they were also taking the WAAIM.
Correct.
Correct?
Yes. And so WIDA Access are their assessments. So their end of year summatives. They also have WIDA screeners too. So there's really 4-ish tests. Well, not 3, because we don't have a WIDA alternate screener yet.
Okay.
But we do have, but these would be those end of year summative for
Okay.
used mainly for program exit.
Okay. And so then there's some testing windows on there. So going back to the PowerPoint though, I'm going to skip those spots. We did put in, here's the guidelines on the tools and accommodations, which is in the notes. Tony put that in the notes there. We also have the tryout speech to text. That's what Kara just went over. And then here's the big home page that they have done a wonderful job of reintroducing this home page. So let me go to that page. Here's guidelines. And here's their new home page. You guys want to talk about any of that? Oh, I put Tony on the spot. I saw her face.
I can do it. I can totally do it. So we rearranged things, and so we decided to make it like task oriented. So if you scroll up a little bit, there's these four things. The bottom one will take you like where it says WA AIM and WIDA and WA Kids. That'll take you back to OSPI's webpage. But the big rectangles in the middle with WCAS and then Smarter Balanced Summative and the interim Smarter Balanced, those three, why don't you click on the Summative Smarter Balanced? They take you to these tasks associated with testing. And so there's some that are before testing, during testing, after testing. There's accessibility supports. Top row on the right is accessibility supports. Why don't you click on that? And if you click on that task, then you get the system that you need. And then if you scroll down, there are associated resources. So this is where you can find all sorts of things, all sorts of documents. So documentation about text to speech or read aloud, parent guardian questionnaire about text to speech. And I think that Jen is going to create some of those for speech to text. And if you scroll up a little bit and then you hit the tab that says user guides and manuals, then you'll get the GTSA. We've got the read aloud guidelines, scribing protocols, simplified test directions, and then I think trainings. You hit the trainings tab. There might be guidelines for choosing text to speech, Tony. That's probably something you did a long time ago. So each of the tasks has just the systems needed for that task, and then these associated resources down below. And if you can't find what you want right there, hit the yellow Find More button.
Oh,
yeah.
oops.
And then you could do all sorts of refining, but if you want to find just that tryout, put in the search here document, in the search here, put tryout, and then do a search.
There it
and
is.
then the yellows are there. Yeah, there it is. And if you click that, then it'll take you. that's actually the URL that I put in the
Yeah, so once you go there, then you can download it from here.
yeah. So but the basic and then if you go hit the home button at the very top again. Oh yeah, we also have the breadcrumb trail, which we did not have in our previous system. The secure browser and technology resources are there at the very top. And so there's things about system requirements and documentation and stuff there. But we really tried to get it because we just really tried to get it to, what do you want to do? I want to prepare for a test. I want to give a test. I want to look at scores after a test, so that you would just get the resources you needed for that part of the assessment cycle, since it's like ongoing and you can be at different places at different times.
Yeah. So I really liked the way that it kind of flowed for me. And there were multiple breadcrumbs to get to places. So if I didn't go here, I could go down to resources and do the search and try it out. So I wanted you to see that. What we'll bring you to is this guidelines, which this is page 9. I'm going to go ahead and make this bigger so you guys can see it better. If you were familiar with the previous version, there was and it's on my PowerPoint actually. It looked like this, right? And there was one for universal, one for embedded, or for accommodations, one for, here's the accommodation supports everything. Now it is all on one page. And it was always on one page before I separated it out for my PowerPoint. This way it kind of just shows that wraparound. And I kind of like that visual.
Can you put that link for that?
Yay! I love that you love the visual. I was on the committee that
You know that I love my
this.
visuals.
And we spent so much time on just this visual because the other visual is trademarked by Smarter Balance.
Oh,
Right.
That's helpful. Okay, I got that. We're already answering 3 questions here, so we'll ask the question. So you guys are doing good. You're talking about what's the difference between embedded and non-embedded accommodations. So
yeah.
and I'm putting those links in there, plus it's on a slide on our PowerPoint.
Yeah, so here's embedded accommodations. Here's non-embedded accommodations with the same universal tools, green, designated supports, cream color, and then yellow for our 3 tiers of accommodation, or the accommodation side. And I appreciate that you didn't make it yellow, green, red.
Okay. I have a question in the chat window that's related to that accommodation. Someone's wondering, Marcy's wondering about using word prediction. The big question other than speech to text.
So I will say word prediction has long been an approved accommodation within our testing system. Where we run into bumps is about interoperability, right? So it's long been a non-embedded tool because when the system was developed, kids were bringing their own devices to the testing that had that. We know there's interoperability issues now with a lot of things moving cloud-based. That doesn't play well in our secure browser. There still is no great solution. Although I can tell you, it is at the forefront of a lot of people's minds to find a solution, and that's states, testing vendors, and then our third-party product people like Don Johnston, and even Google and Microsoft are at the table working on and trying to think through this interoperability. So word prediction has always been allowed as an accommodation. Right now it requires, it's not embedded, so it's something the student would have to bring with them to the test setting. And right now we know there are very few things built into the devices students use that will play well within the browser. So I think this is where I would point back to, and maybe Rose or Tracy can speak to that, some of those supporting resources you have for state testing.
Yeah, we have a couple slides on it. There's several vendors that have exam modes in their software. So if you set it up on a separate device as a non-embedded accommodation and you turn on exam mode and follow all the directions I want you have to turn off, that's the trick. Then your student can use it right? And that process is a little wonky because they have to use it and type their answers, but then doesn't a scribe someone have to take their answers and then type them into the secure browser again or something? How does that work?
Yeah, that's kind of our workaround, right? Is this 2-device use. So deploying the student's technology on one device where they can use word prediction, but then somehow what they've put on that device needs to be transferred into the device running the test. So that could be through the student. That could be through a scribe. Gets me wondering about speech to text now. If they did that in the other device, if they could read that back to themselves into the machine.
They could.
I suppose if they had both together, but then they'd have to make all the corrections that would be happening in this side when they've already corrected it on one side. It's kind of, that would be laborious, huh?
That's true.
Yeah. So, I mean, these are some of those other considerations, right?
Yeah. And just so any of you who may not have caught the email at the beginning of last week or something, or this week, Don Johnston and Text Help have merged some of
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
They have. They're now still separate, but they're starting to work together. So I'm told that from Don Johnston, don't worry about if you have Don Johnston tools, you don't have to change your tools. They're going to be working together now. And Nora, so Kristen, we might want to have Nora come in and do a little training with us on what all that looks like.
That's big news.
It is big news.
Yeah.
Tracy, can you go back to actually the visual with the wraparound, which is exactly what Tony wanted it to be, the wraparound. I think it's really clear to people that the embedded tools are the ones built into the secure browser. They are built into the machine. They are built into what happens, and you don't have to really do anything extra than turn those things on in Tide. The non-embedded gets a little bit confusing for some people because some things are things that you would use if a student was doing a paper pencil test and they were just, you'd have the translation glossaries for the paper pencil test, or you'd have the multiplication table for the paper pencil test, or you'd have noise buffers, for when they were sitting there. But then there are some things like a scribe that could be used for a paper pencil test or can also be used in the online test. So there are some of the tools that are non-embedded, meaning that they're not embedded in the test system, but they're like a human can scribe for the online test. A human can read aloud the Spanish version of the math or science test if the student has that and they have the stacked translation for, that they'd have the Spanish version on the screen with their translated test, but then they could have it read aloud to them. So I think that's where people get confused about what is non-embedded, because some of the non-embedded tools can be used with the online test.
I think how I generally characterize this is embedded is within the computer. No one has to carry anything or walk or bring anything to the test setting, right? Somebody just needs to turn it on. Non-embedded means somebody has to take action to procure and bring to the student in the test setting. So a scribe has to physically come in to do that, even if the student's testing online, right? So it's something needs to be actually brought to the test setting for use.
Right. And sometimes the vocabulary gets a little crazy because we have embedded, non-embedded, and then we have, and I get these mixed up all the time. We have universal and then designated and then accommodations. And it's like, which one is which and who gets to use for which? And I like that you have here that it's for all students, every student, including our some students and including our IEP 504 students.
Yes.
This group here, I've always said that this group here in the some students land is at least 2 people. You need to have a group of people, and 2 people can make up a group.
Yes.
That they need to have a conversation
Yes.
that is directly related to how is that student going to use like a cover overlay, for example. How does that benefit that kid?
Yep.
And then we can say, yep, that is a support that that student should use. And then we have our what we're most familiar with is this IEP 504 plan group.
Yeah, so I will say, I love that you brought up the designated supports group, because that is the group that seems squishy. And I will say, Smarter Balanced created that group. Like, this is not created, like it was a Smarter Balanced and Park thing. When the feds ask us questions about accommodations, they are including designated supports in that. And so they consider all of those tier 2 and tier 3 to be accommodations for testing. And they also have some stuff in some of the documentation that we have to give them that talks about these supports matching the student's IEP, matching their 504 plan, matching their EL testing plan, or matching another plan that might be written for a student to so documenting these designated supports, and the 2 people, I'll tell you what happened way back when we started with text to speech. We would have a DAC just decide every 3rd grader needed text to speech. They just turned it on for the whole district. And there were some kids who really hated that voice, like really hated it, and it really upset them. We could have like one teacher declaring all my 3rd graders need text to speech. And so the school coordinator just turned it on, but there wasn't a conversation. And so that 2 people, yes to educators, the classroom teacher and the counselor, the special education teacher and the regular teacher. But I would encourage the parent and the student to also be added to that conversation, and that the student try it out in a practice or training test before you do it, because the worst thing to do to a kid, I think, is to throw them into a test that has color contrast on it, because it helped them one time in class,
Well, and a good point to that is to remember that everybody needs to try out those tools. You brought it up earlier, but everybody needs to try out the tools before they actually start using them. Listening to a human voice and listening to a computer voice are 2 totally different brain functions.
Yes.
Speaking into a computer and typing into a computer, 2 different brain functions. So try them out beforehand. And as IEP teams, I often see somebody's made that decision for a student without ever having tried it with the student, just because they think it's good. And I have to remind them, is that a universal design support for them? Or is that something that student requires for their education?
And Traci, I think you bring up a really good point where I see even more squishiness coming into the conversation. I think confounded and maybe compounded by the pandemic and our experiences with remote learning is that even the things that we're seeing in accommodations these days are becoming massively used tools as instructional technology. And no longer live in that space of this is just an accommodation for a student with a disability who needs access. Right. Access is becoming to the forefront for all, whether it's temporary or permanent, right? Like, I need to use my ramp because I'm tired today, or I need to use the door opener because my hands are full. I think we're starting to think of access more broadly, which is making some of this definition between the tiers becoming more and more difficult and more squishy. Because I can see where classroom teachers are like, but all my kids have text to speech and speech to text as a support that they dictate based on their one-on-one device, right?
Exactly.
And when they need it. And
that's why I end up saying, what is that tool for specifically? Yep. And if it's necessary for that student, by God, put it in there and explain it through the IEP and sprinkle your assistive technology sprinkles all over through your IEP. Rose, for some reason, I'm having a really difficult time being able to stop sharing. I don't know why. It's hidden behind something.
Oh, hover, like make your mouse go to the bottom of your screen, like pull it down there and see if it pops up, or it might be at the top.
Well,
See it yet?
I mean, I see it. I just can't get it to pull up.
Zoom is rebelling against you today, Tracy.
I tell ya.
Let's see if it'll let me. Oh, do you want me to bump you out?
Yes, please.
Okay. Oh, there's my notes. Well, I did want to, I can stop sharing here for a minute. We've been having a back channel conversation to kind of expand on the accommodations, the non-embedded ones on word prediction. So I was kind of explaining, this is my most recent understanding, that the desktop word prediction tools, because you could set them up securely and you could put them in exam mode and restrict the things you need. Those were the ones that can be used right now if they're set up in that way. But something like when Don Johnston went to the Chrome extension version, I know we're trying to figure out a way to let Chrome extensions be allowed, but so far still not, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that would be, oh, I didn't quite get that exam mode here. I'll send my, see, I was trying to send that little message there. So we have on the slideshow that Tracy had up, and I could pull it up again too. We had a few slides. Let me just show this because I think it's worth knowing that you can go back and refer to this. Let's see. No, this one. Yeah. Okay. If you scroll down here, I'm going to find it. Embedded universal tools. Oh, where are they? Embedded.
What are you looking for?
It's speech. Okay. That's the speech to text. I'm looking for the word I'm predicting. Here we go. So we have these slides on how to use word prediction. So for Don Johnston, they have a link on their webpage that talks about how you set it up. And, you know, they're not really supporting their desktop version, but Michelle was saying that they still have desktop. So if it's still operational on your computers, technically you could use it. And then read and write. So we heard that Don Johnston and TextHelp have merged. So read and write software has a desktop version that should work. And they have a video overview and a link to how to do that. And then my district is using WordQ, which is also desktop.
Okay, it's happening. Everybody say.
And they have an exam mode and that you can turn on and do the same thing. So the principle is, like Tony said, setting it up on a separate device in exam mode with the word prediction. And then when they produce their work, it has to be somehow transcribed back into the secure browser. But we do have those slides for you to refer back to if you're using any one of those three. And again, work with your vendors. And as long as it can be, like I said, in kind of a desktop secure on a computer that's not on the browser. That's the key, I think. Is that correct, Tony and Kara?
That's my understanding of the issue, is if the device needs to go to the web to get something, that's what it doesn't want to do.
Okay, great. I'm just going to run back here and see because we're having these great discussions. I think we've covered a lot of our questions. I do want to spend, Kristen made an effort to ask me, I'm going to jump to number 8 for a minute. How are you guys kind of including parents in this discussion? And what's important for parents to know about AT accommodations on state testing? We're talking a lot about it, technical conversations, but in order for this to be successful, who are the players and how can we involve parents so they know what their child needs and how to support that? Any thoughts on that?
Well, one of the things that I did see that as we were scrolling through on the website was something there for parents. Kara, where was that?
Ooh.
We were in summative.
Link for parents. That would be good if you guys find that.
And then we went to smarter balanced accessibility.
Was it
And
the
then-
student parent questionnaires?
I think so.
Excellent.
And then we went to user guides. I'm in the totally wrong place.
I can get to it if somebody wants to let me share. My screen.
Oh, yeah, I can do that. Hold on.
Oh, I can do it already. I must be.
Okay, someone magically did that. Maybe it was Mariosa. Thank you.
Okay, so from here, so the homepage, WCAT portal, then I clicked on the summative smarter balance tests. And then I'm going to go to the accessibility supports, and then I'm scrolling down, and there is this text-to-speech read aloud parent guardian questionnaire.
Oh, nice.
And
Can you put that link in there? That's a good link.
yeah, so this, and there's actually one for the student as well. But this is great documentation to show, because I was talking with our math specialist about this yesterday, and she said, you know, a parent, once you've gone through this and figured out what works, you shouldn't have to go through it every year. Like, if it works and the kid likes it, like, let's just continue. But the parent and or the teacher having a trail of papers that they can take to the next teacher, or when a kid moves from elementary to middle school, like, we've already tried this, this really works, I think. And I think your school staff at the new school would find this helpful. But just some questions to ask, to start considering. Yeah, so those are on here. And I think there's this documentation of possible need. So this would be documentation of educator questions. I make this a little bigger. Educator questions. What did the parent say? What did the student say? And
none of these are required by the state. These are here to support. I think from the state, what we're most interested in is focusing the conversation back on student access, right?
Yeah.
And making sure that it's not the adult in the room who decides student A needs support X, that really that student and family is involved in that conversation and the evaluation of what's being used with kids.
So you know where this makes me think? Makes me think of all those transition assessments that we do have to do as students are getting older, and getting student voice into the IEP. These are great ways of doing some rapport building with students prior to the IEP and getting their voice in there for how do they want to do testing? How do they want to do their work? What works for them? So I love it. I'm pulling that one out.
Okay, someone has asked if the documents are available in Spanish, probably the parent documents. Is that what you meant, Katie? No?
Yes, that's what I was asking about.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we don't have them in other languages right now.
but you're
Well, it would be a great conversation at like an IEP meeting, right? When you have an interpreter there.
Yeah, okay. Are they in an accessible text format? Because there are some screen readers where you can, I think Co-Writer used to, or Snap and Read, you can toggle between languages, but in the browser. So there might be some tools to help with that, Katie.
We would hope they're accessible.
Yeah, so I mean, if they're not like in a picture
they
format.
are ADA accessible, yes. Google is not offering to translate it for me right now.
I
Google's
wonder if
taking a
Edge
break.
will translate it.
Well, we have translators in our district who do a lot of our translation services for us, and we're fortunate to have many available in our district, but I'm just wondering for some of those other districts who may not have that available to them.
OSPI will not be sad if you do that work and then share it with us so we can post it on our website.
Or make other versions of them, like for younger kids, right? Or develop them for other tools.
Yes.
And we can help support.
I will keep you posted.
Okay, got that. What translation supports would people use to make them accessible in other languages? Okay, so we talked. Kristen, do you have any more to add about that? I mean, so I know, I'm pretty sure Snap and Read does that. I haven't used it in a couple of years, but I know that was a fairly new tool. And we talked about maybe Google Translate. Any other strategies for maybe trying to translate a document like that if you're going to send home to a parent?
There's the Microsoft translation.
Just going to say, so if you're in Microsoft OneNote, if you paste it in there, you can translate it in Microsoft OneNote, right? Online.
Oh, I haven't done that. I just know that I have a translator on from Microsoft.
Oh yeah, we can use the same, similar to Google Translate. I'll say, or Microsoft. I'm putting in the notes for you guys.
And we probably have Word versions, because I know sometimes it's hard to copy and paste from a PDF. So if that is something someone needs that in, feel free to reach out. I'm 99.9% sure we have a Word version as well, because most of our documents start that way.
Everyone is that goes for anything that's sitting on the portal. Like we have a Word version for everything because we start there.
That's great. So if there's a Word version and you open it up in Microsoft Word Online, you can literally go into the immersive reader settings and translate the whole document. I mean, it's going to be like Google Translate or anything else. It's not going to be perfect, but it's pretty good. And it'll read it to you too, read aloud in that language. So, I mean, next best thing, I put in my notes, translator, in-person translators are always the best. But in lieu of that, what are other supports that people could use? All right, looks good.
Can I say something else about translations? Something that people, many people, it seems like people are not aware, is that we do have translated versions of the test directions. And in the past, the Smarter Balance directions were really not friendly. So we decided to make them friendly. They're not currently posted on the portal. We're getting them ready for this next round of testing. But if you are interacting with your English language development, multilingual teachers, and talking about supports for those students, we have like all of the directions that a teacher says out loud to the kid, like click this on your screen and here's this, if you do this, it'll pause the test. Like all of those things that a teacher says as a kid is logging into the test. We have that translated into like the 13 or 15 translated languages that the translated glossaries are in. So we have that for math and ELA and science. And if you want a Word version of that, because you have another language that's not in those 15, we are happy to send that to a district to create a translated version of that. Just logging into the test. Like we can't do much about the content. Like a lot of the content has to be in English, and we've got the stacked Spanish translation. We're always pushing for more, but at least to help the kids, like just log in something that's familiar to them. We have that available. So another thing that not a lot of people know about, but happy to have you share.
That would be awesome. I could totally see some of our ELL teachers being able to use some of that too. So
I'll make a note, Traci and Rose, to email you when those are posted. Yeah.
Okay.
How are we doing on our questions, Rose?
I'm just kind of scanning through here. Did we answer this with do you need an IEP to access SBA language supports?
You need an IEP to access SBA language supports, meaning
That'd be like a
language
universal, would that be a universal accommodation?
All of our language supports are designated support. So that's like the translated glossary, translated test directions, Spanish, stacked Spanish version of the test. You do not even have to be in English language development services. So you could you could be so fluent that you don't even qualify for services, or you were in services and then you tested out of services, and so you're no longer. If you are a multilingual learner, you can have any of those language supports that are in the designated supports.
Yeah, and I see the bilingual dictionary. I see illustration glossary. So that could be somebody who, yeah. Mm-hmm. So illustration glossary, there's the medical supports. I see read aloud in Spanish.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. And math and science have translated glossaries of words that are not like math or science specific, so that students can get that support as well. So
what are medical supports?
Tony, can you
address this one? Yeah, that covers things like audio FM systems.
Okay.
Or we've recently had like blood sugar tracking. So that's like their apps on phones now. So we were seeing these submitted as non-standard accommodation requests, and we're like, No. Can we add a category of medical devices? So it would be
Okay,
any of those type of things that contribute to a student's health and safety,
okay.
or FM systems, or what else? Yeah, we're not going to make people leave their glucose monitoring app at the door during state testing.
Okay, that could also be water.
Yeah.
For those students who have water on their IEP because they dehydrate, or, I mean, I've got a couple.
No, I was just gonna say, like, that's just, to me, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
If a kid has a water bottle, have a water bottle.
You think so?
Please don't send a request for water or specialized furniture,
made me want to
right?
get one of those for Timothy, like for my son, like, because he needs water, or like life is not pretty. I don't think he'll qualify for an IEP. Maybe he needs a 504 for water.
Yeah.
But I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. Is there are things that really have no impact on testing, like construct or security, and those are the type of things. If it's not there, that doesn't mean it's not necessarily allowed. It's just that student needs to sit on a bouncy ball. We don't want to have to give guidance on that, right? Specialized furniture, right? So if you ever have a question about whether or not something's allowed, reach out and ask. And there are even things that we have no language, like math manipulatives. We have a non-standard accommodation request process for that. So if there's something that you're wondering about that you can find no reference in our GTSA about, it doesn't mean that can't be used. It just means there might be things you need to ask us if you can use, and then we can approve those through our non-standard accommodation policies. What we won't do is say yes to something that there is language in our GTSA. So calculators on non-calculator allowed items, we'll never approve that because that violates the test construct for those items. But there are other things that we take into consideration. Some of the translations for languages that Smarter Balanced hasn't provided translations for. We have allowed human translators for those. Our School for the Deaf uses Signed Exact English. They apply every year for that because that's not addressed, and we approve that. So we do have a process to approve those supports and accommodations that are void of language in our GTSA. So just know there are other avenues you can explore.
Awesome.
Cool.
So
Well,
we
you
only have
guys-
about, oh yeah, I was gonna say we have 4 minutes left, but is there any other questions you guys have? I mean, we have there's one or two we haven't really talked about a lot, but we pretty much touched on all of them. I just want to know, make sure we're answering any burning questions you brought with you today, since we have Kara and Tony here. Are we doing a good job of covering everything? Oh, there's one message. Oh, thanks, Tony. Tony's putting her email in there.
My email's in there. So if you have further questions or other questions pop up, always happy to respond.
You guys,
Email's the
thank
best
you
way.
so much for coming with us today, and for all the work that you guys are doing and making sure that we understand it so that we can help our teams understand. And Tony, I love the visuals. So you
I
just
know, I
keep
was
going
just
with your visuals.
The visuals are great. I was just copying that in because as I look at questions, I'm like, what's the difference between universal, designated, and accommodations? I'm like, oh, we got the visual. I'm pasting that back in there.
Yeah.
So we got some nice links. Most of this is going to be in the PowerPoint, but then we've talked about a lot of things beyond that. So you'll be able to have access to both my notes. So if you go in that folder, it should be live. I'm typing and you can all look at what I'm typing. So we got embedded notes, the PowerPoint for today that just had the questions and kind of the guide for today, and then the big PowerPoint resource. So yay, Kristen. Okay, it gets clearer and clearer, clear as mud, right? No,
And we'll be adding this to the SETSA YouTube channel most likely tomorrow afternoon. So then if you need to share this out to others, you can.
Yeah, this is great. No, it definitely is clear. And the more we have these resources and things like Kara just rolled out that beautiful resource on speech to text, those are great. So then when there are questions, we can refer you to those specific documents. So it's a lot, but we're so happy you're here today, and thank you guys for being here. So I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.
You know,
And
the other